Alex.
Chris.
Welcome
Thank you.
to the podcast. Alex is a dear friend of mine who, when I met him, I was doing farm track technologies and he was doing Crik Nutrition, the cricket protein powder that was actually really good. And so I was excited to get you on because we've done a lot of traveling together. We built our businesses around the same time and a lot's happened since then. So just take me back, Alex, to when you were starting Crik and why you decided to start a cricket protein powder. Because at the time, it wasn't really a thing yet. It was.
Yeah, no, it was not really. I was at CN for CN Rail for 9 years at the time, and I really hated it. And it wasn't anything to do with the job. It's like a great place to work, great wages, pretty easy job. It just wasn't particularly for me. And was flipping houses on the back end on my days off and stuff like that. Had a couple rental properties, and again, it just wasn't feeling totally fulfilled. I had achieved like all my goals, and I hadn't really at that point in time been setting goals, but I just had achieved everything that I thought I might by the time I'm like my age now, and I was like 20.
What were your goals at the time?
Well, I didn't really have any, so it was just like, I wanted a house and a truck and a motorcycle, and I was like 20, and I had a few houses and a truck and a motorcycle and dirt bikes, and I was like, all this material stuff doesn't make me happy. Yeah,
really materialistic point of view.
Totally.
But when you're young, you think that a sports car and cool shit is the way to go, and then you get older and you're like, fuck. It's just accumulating debt.
Glad I did it at that time. I got into a business group out of the States, and there was like a few of us got selected for all these people that applied. There's 50 people got selected to go on this. I was lucky enough to be one of them, and there was a couple of guys in the group that offered to mentor me in e-commerce, and I knew I wanted to kind of get into online business even before I got into that or was really taking it seriously, and I ended up putting my house up for sale, quitting, and moving overseas with them. They mentored me on e-commerce for a year, and I was doing my first online business I built that actually started making money was just selling fire pits online. And I came across that just from the course that I had bought at the time and doing like market research. Where was there a hole? Like I made these giant lists of all these different industries and like where were there not like specific websites, like niche websites for certain products. So I got into that, and solar LED lighting. And then one morning I was just drinking a coffee, scrolling through Facebook, and I saw Tim Ferriss had posted a link about cricket, like just dropped a bunch of money into a cricket protein bar company. And I was like, me being into health and fitness my whole life and sports, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of gross. Like, why would he do that? And I clicked it, and I was just sold on the idea in 2 paragraphs. I know all the like WEF stuff will probably people like, oh, cricket guy making us eat bugs, but I had quit. I was big into bodybuilding and just supplements and all that, and I had tore my hamstrings when first time I went and played baseball as an adult after being on the road forever with CN. I was like, I look like I'm in shape, but I'm actually not. So I got off of all the supplements into more functional fitness instead of just lifting weights at the gym. And when I had the idea for the protein powder, I was lifting at the time and doing jiu-jitsu, and I was just doing so much exercise, I was having a hard time eating enough protein, and got carbs back in, and I wanted some more like quick protein snacks. So I was just using protein powder at the time, and I liked the idea of a whole food protein powder. And that's kind of where that idea came in with the protein bars, and I was like, oh man, this is a great idea. I want to order these protein bars, but I looked at them and there wasn't much of the ingredient they were touting in there, and there's a bunch of sugar, like a lot of protein bars. So I looked around for a protein powder, and there was none. And I was like, oh, this is my moment. I'm like, this is a thing where like you want a thing to exist and it doesn't. And there's obviously a demand for protein powder. There's obviously demand for this ingredient is getting a lot of media attention and stuff, and there's really nobody doing it. And I had just been learning e-commerce for the previous year. And I remember I shut down my websites that day, erased my whole whiteboard. I remember my girlfriend at the time walked into the room, and she saw me wiping down the thing. I'm like, I got the idea. She's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like another crazy thing that I'm doing. And yeah, I just went all in on that. I'm like, I'm going to go all in on this. To me, it makes sense. And yeah, that day I just ordered I found out where the cricket protein farm was. The cricket farm is in Canada. So I called them up, ordered, and just started experimenting with my own, and then spent a few weeks on the phone figuring out how. I remember the first thing I Googled was how do you manufacture protein? And it just went from there.
Yeah. It was interesting because I remember at the time, and when you had the protein, you gave me some samples and I brought it to the squash club and I was getting guys to try it. Because you don't, again, it's what's cool about crickets in general is when you have a whole food protein like that, you're getting like the amino acids, it's like the bones that are getting crushed up. All of those good things of eating like a full animal in crickets. Now it's very common. Back then, people were like, "Really? Is this really a thing?" But it makes total sense that you would eat crickets. And also, I've traveled to Southeast Asia. People eat bugs all the time. It's like part of their diet almost out there. It's good for you, especially if you get over the fact that it's bugs. And honestly, crickets taste good. They actually kind of taste like peanuts. So you get over that fact. It's actually a very healthy snack. And I'm assuming you know better than it's pretty sustainable. And I mean, what's the life cycle of a cricket? And how long do they take to breed before you at that farm before they become food for us?
Oh man, it's been years since I really was deep into all of that. But I believe, oh yeah, it's coming back to me. So you process them at 6 weeks. So and then they do all their own. Like it's not like a regular farm where you have to go and inseminate animals. Like I grew up farming and working on lots of different farms. It's hardest part a lot of time can be and expensive is like breeding. And time consuming. Like I was just talking to my friend today. He's calving cattle right now. He owns multiple businesses, a car dealership, and all this stuff. And he's in a barn right now calving. So with the crickets, you just let them go, and they lay their eggs in these little wet sponges that they put in the rooms where they grow and feed them. And you take them out. It's like extremely clean process. They repurpose chicken barns basically and clean them all out, and they're like. Yeah, if you Google it, it's Entimo Farms. You can see pictures of what it looks like, and yeah, very very easy process. So it takes only 6 weeks for them to grow. So they just by definition use a lot less resources and say minimum 18 months to get a cow ready to process. And then like you were saying earlier, they wash them and grind them up. And there's no waste there really, like at all. So that's why I thought it was such a cool ingredient because it's the whole protein source, and they're so high in protein to begin with. It depends what you feed them. Like the edible ones for human consumption are typically in the high 60% protein. And then, like you said, they're all their organs and all that. They fast them before they grind them up too, so they get rid of all the poop and stuff like that in there. So they're really clean. Everything's tested. And yeah, again, like having those organs in there, it's like eating liver or like eating kidneys and all that, where all the real nutrition is, which wild animals go after first when they hunt and stuff like that. It's something that we're missing from our diet and why we need to take supplements. And it just, to me at the time, it seemed like a perfect solution. And that was why I went all in on it. And then something like a protein powder, like athletes, natural health food products, a lot of that stuff doesn't taste good. And I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I was actually surprised at the end of the day how, like, it's still actually, I use it every day still. And it's surprising to me that I was able to make it, like, actually taste better than any of the other protein powders I was taking.
Yeah, I remember, I didn't mind it. I found it, your original recipe, because now it's high protein. I like this one a lot better than the original because I found Crik was a little grainy and had that more of that stevia taste to it. But the formula you have now is I think a lot more balanced.
Yeah, well, once a company was acquired, because I was just grinding it out. I'd quit my job at CN and spent 2 years building other online businesses before I stopped and did this. I was pretty much out of money. I only had a little bit of money to develop the product at the time, and got like a minimum viable product out for our Kickstarter. And once the company was acquired, at that point, I had what to me was unlimited funds to develop the perfect product based on everything I had known. Because I went through with Crik by myself, I'd gone through 3 iterations of product development, but it was still always like pretty lean on cash. And then, yeah, after we got acquired, moved down to Los Angeles with it. I got to pick and choose. We got to visit a ton of different factories, develop the product at multiple different manufacturing facilities, and then pick the one that was like easiest to work with, had the best ingredients, and listen to the direction that they were giving, which is hard to do in a lot of industries. Getting giant companies with me up here by myself, but having some weight behind us and some good known investors really made a big difference, and basically got to develop my dream product. So narrowed it down, all the better ingredients, and that whole time along the way too, the farm was improving their process for the cricket itself too, which is why you get a much smoother product.
I see the way they're grinding them.
Yeah, exactly.
So sorry, when you say you had 3 product development variations, was that post the initial, or are you saying?
Yeah, post the initial. So right at the beginning, if I think off the top of my head here, at the beginning, I think I had enough to get I think it was 12 sample packets of different ones. So I used what I had learned at CN for troubleshooting electrical circuits. I kind of used that process to develop the protein where here's my the closest one that I want it to taste like out on the market. I went and bought a bunch of proteins, and because it's very one tub of protein when you're developing it is $600 to get made and shipped out to you. Because there's somebody on the lab doing it, right? Very expensive with the food scientists, and they have to especially order from flavor houses the flavoring, and because I wanted all natural and organic and just really expensive to do the one-off. So I think I had enough money to do 12 samples. So I started this is what I want. This is what they wanted. I kind of cut that in half and started at half and made equally spaced, if you want to think of it like that, to flavor and sugar versus my dream product, and against all their best advice. And I stripped out all the things that I didn't think were necessary that a lot of supplement companies oh, well, you got to have this gum in there and this thickening agent and the mouthfeel. And I'm I'm going for a health food product that is all about the ingredients, not tricking people. I want people that want this because of what it is, not because they, don't want. They want it to be like a milkshake kind of deal.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Because those are the ones I'm used to. It's you get the strawberry protein. There's so many fillers in there.
Yeah.
So when you're going through that process, obviously you're thinking about, okay, so you have. You want to get lots of crickets in there, and then you have the other things that you need to make it taste good, and maybe some other different types of powders or whatever. But then you also have to think, okay, so you're doing it on this small scale. When you're doing those initial 10 to 12 product samples, you're pricing out because you must have had a price target in mind per tub.
Yep.
And then you're trying to think, okay, when I do this on volume and scale, this is the price target I want to get to. So were the company you were working with to do the samples, were they helping with that, or were you just figuring that out?
Yeah, I mean, they were helping with it. But I quickly learned, especially me, I think it took me, I can't remember exactly, but it was around 50 something factories before somebody would take me seriously. And they were, I think, the last or the very second last one on, I would imagine, probably almost every major manufacturer in Canada.
Were you using? So sorry. So you got your 12 initial samples. You picked the one. You're like, okay, this is my ingredient. This is the one I'm going with. Now you have your tub of protein. What? Then you start going to the manufacturers? Or?
No, so I did that with them after I found them. So it was really because I was trying to figure out how did this industry work.
Okay, I see.
And I had already picked the one that was willing to work with. They were like, well, if you want to spend the money, we'll develop it. And most of the other ones kind of laughed at me and didn't take me seriously, and I got hung up on quite a bit. So once we picked them, they're willing to work with us on it. I found out what other products they made, so I went and bought all their products. They were good, so I was like, okay, yep, definitely going with them. Not going to waste my money, and researched them, checked them out on Google Maps, made sure it was a legitimate place, and yeah, it was just like, this is what they're like, well, this is what we want. I'm like, well, this is my like ideal. This is their ideal. This is my ideal from an ingredient perspective, regardless of price. I think we did like the one halfway first, and then I picked 12 in there based on just basically just on the feedback I had from it, feedback they had from it, and I split that initial one sample into like 4 parts. And I tried one with a bunch of people. I tried one with like my family and my friends that had been into fitness, so they had experience with protein shakes. And then yeah, from that one sample, we took like the 11 or 10 whatever I had left, and basically spaced them out. And I was like, okay, this is the closest to it. Give me like 2 more of these little packets, because I think one serving would cost me, I can't remember what it was. Well, you could probably do the math, like 500 divided by $60, or 60 servings. So I got a couple more packets, just made sure that was good. And then there was a bodybuilding show here, and somebody gave me a free booth, and like shared a booth space with me. I'm like, this is my moment to like really test it out. So I made the little tweaks without even trying them, got the one tub sent over, and I broke that down into, it was a 60 serving tub, and I broke that down into like 120 half servings, and we're just giving them out and getting feedback from everybody at the bodybuilding show. And then once we had that, like that was where I wanted, the little bit stevia one. And that was the one I went forward with on the Kickstarter. And just to back it up a little bit more, my thought process with it was what flavor to choose. I love chocolate, but I did a ton of research, and by and large, vanilla is the most popular out there, and I hate vanilla protein powder. So I made a vanilla protein powder that I liked, and yeah, it was a success, and everybody liked it from the Kickstarter. Got the feedback, and then I used that money to refine the product again. Based on all that feedback, like lower the stevia, and we played with looking at other major manufacturers out there like Vega. I noticed like the companies that had more expensive, higher quality ingredients, they had a smaller tub. Instead of like 30 servings, they had a 20 serving tub, because they look, you look at it like, well, that's a month worth of somebody who goes to the gym 5 times a week if you got 20 servings. Right. So that was able to bring our tub price down, and in that whole time, had a year to research different, better ingredients, or really dig into manufacturers, find new suppliers for our manufacturer, just really refine that product to start making it make a profit.
Right. Yeah, because it's costly again in the startup phase too, because you're not really at scale yet. Mm-hmm. And then all those ingredients, and even the crickets are a lot more expensive than your traditional whey proteins powders, I would assume. But what was I'm curious, what was the Kickstarter process like? I've never done a Kickstarter personally. How?
So it was great to set up. Unfortunately, actually, Kickstarter, I had the whole, it was like one of the only things I didn't procrastinate on till the night before, and I had it like all set up and ready. I hired like a local buddy of mine to write and direct the film that we made for it. And that was all ready. It was all uploaded. I had the whole campaign done. Pretty easy to set up. And like the night before, which we got a bunch of media coverage the night before Earth Day, when we were going to launch, just to align with that. That was a goal I had set like 8 months prior. They banned me for selling illegal products because I claimed to cure or something diseases. And I'm like, and then I looked on there and I'm like, there's actually like people claiming pretty big medical claims on there. And your rebuttal was 140 characters, like basically a tweet. And I'm like, so they banned me, it was really, oh man, I felt way more stressed since then, but at the time that was like the most stressful to me, because we were like in the paper that couple days before, like all the papers here, all like national media coverage aimed at this day. And then I was like, what do I do? And went over to Indiegogo, and it was basically the same process, just as easy to set up. But I was able to get somebody on the phone and be like, hey, is this gonna ban me? Like, if like, what, do you know why this happened? And just Indiegogo, it went without a hitch. It was great. And then Kickstarter actually because I tried to as much as I
Yeah.
could. Like 3 years later, they got back to me and said, "Oh, sorry, we made a mistake. You can launch your product now."
Wow.
I was like, "Oh, that's very
Wow.
nice."
When the algorithm fails.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And they've obviously got flagged for
Whatever reason. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's even like on like Facebook ads and stuff like that. Like supplements are kind of a, 'cause there's
Yeah.
so many scammy things out there, right?
Yeah.
Like I just
Facebook
figured-
ads get rejected all the time. And
Yeah.
usually you're just like, review. It's
Yeah.
just their algorithms like, this looks suspicious. They'll just immediately reject it,
yeah,
review
like,
it.
oh, you're making people eat bugs. Okay, weirdo.
Yeah, exactly. Like, But yeah, I've gone through I now realize which ads are scams because our Facebook ad account got hacked, Business Manager, like a year and a half ago, and that was what a nightmare. And it was everyone had 2-factor authentication set up, everything was solid, and then went through one of my contractors. They got in through his Facebook account, took it over. They ran hundreds of thousands of dollars through our business cards for ads, which we all got back. It was all in the end, it was fine.
Yeah.
But what a process, because Facebook doesn't really care about you. So
Yeah.
you're just a small advertisers. But I saw the products in there. So they had that one product where that bird flies into that window bird feeder with the camera.
Okay,
That's one of them. There was a bunch of these products on there. I was like, and sometimes I'll buy products and never see them. I'm like, that's probably just them running scams on accounts, right?
Oh yeah.
But okay, so you ran it through Indiegogo then. How much did you raise?
My goal was 15,000, and we hit it within the first 28 or 36 hour, or sorry, 24 or 36 hours, something
Sick.
like that. So yeah, it ended up working good, and that was kind of my goal. Was like, of course, I wanted to make like a massive like $100,000 thing, and I've seen, there were some girls that had like a Cricket cracker product in the States, and they got on Yahoo front page and made 80 grand on theirs in the first day. And I wanted to do that, but I was like, let's be realistic. What is a number that would make me go, okay, there's something here? And it was like, I know I'm probably going to get like $5,000 from friends and family. So I made it 15. I figured if I could get $10,000 from strangers buying crickets strangers I had never met to give me money for this product they'd never seen or tried, I figured there'd be something there, and then I could use the rest of my savings to put in that first order of 500 tubs and move forward.
I was going to ask, so was the 15,000 for inventory? Was that the big thing, or?
It was no, I had saved I had money saved from when my money I had saved up when I was working at CN, and I had some rental properties, and it was just basically savings left that I knew I would feel comfortable being able to do the first run of. I think my first run I did was like $30-something thousand, and I had like 60 or something total left over, or at that time, and so it would give me enough money to do a double, like basically the same. I can't remember how much it was, double plus like. So it would have been 1,000 of each of 2 flavors, and the first run was like 500.
I was going to ask, do you remember? Can you break down like what your cost was at that low volume and what you were selling it for? I think you were selling for 80 something.
No, well, yeah, it was in American dollars because most of the was either international or U.S. was. I'm trying to think. I think it was in American dollars. I can't remember.
I got a backdoor deal, so
Yeah. I can't remember, but I know once we were rolling, we were selling it for $59 US a tub.
yeah.
And then so looking at costs, they were pretty high on that first one. Like they were probably somewhere up around $20 a tub. And then plus shipping, I didn't really know what I was doing with that either at the time. So the shipping was more than the tub itself for a single tub. And the thing that made me, because everybody's like, no, look, it's way too expensive. You're not going to make this work. A buddy of mine from that business group I had got in, not the same guys I had mentored me, but another guy in the meantime had quit his job at Google and started a whiskey company, Farino Distillery, I can't remember, I think he's out of San Francisco. I was talking to him and looking for some advice when I was like still in ideation phase, and I'm like, oh, they all say this is like really expensive, and he's like, well, what's your margins? I'm like, off my Kickstarter, I could probably do 15%. He's like, well, that's better than the liquor. He's like, yeah, different industries have different margins. He's like, so if you think you can do that off there, you're gonna be good because you go e-commerce, you're gonna learn how to get cheaper shipping, cheaper warehousing. You're going to be at scale, probably find better manufacturers. So that gave me the confidence to move forward and not be too worried about it, and like flush out the product and the demand first. By the end of it, with some marketing tricks like giving like free shipping, or I think I pulled the shipping out of it because we used to include shipping. So I pulled the shipping out of it. I lowered the price of the tub, but if you only bought one tub, it was a little bit higher plus shipping. If you bought multiple tubs, because it ended up being, once I found a warehouse, and then I actually found warehouses in the States that were much cheaper, and they had algorithms that would move your product around to basically minimize the costs on shipping based on because they'd have one in Texas, I think, one in Chicago, and one in the Pacific Northwest. So it's like they'd be like, hey, it's like cheap fee to move like a couple pallets of it over here based on your sales. That's gonna like dramatically reduce your shipping costs, right? Because the U.S. is broken up in zones from where you're shipping to where you're going. So and it's just different. It's funny how like the highway routes and stuff really affect that. But yeah, once you narrowed that down, by the end I was paying, I believe, about $8 a tub US to ship it. It was costing me around the like low teens for it, like probably somewhere around 12 to 13 or $14 to make. And if you would sell 3 tubs or ship 3 tubs, the cost was only like $4 more than if you ship 1 tub. So I'm like, okay, well, let's start bundling it. And then where are those price breaks on shipping? Then you'd have deals on cases. And just having that idea didn't lower my order volume, like from customers. But it tripled my cart value. So it's like I instantly started making almost, like it was not quite triple, but I almost instantly started making triple the amount of money. And then also my costs went down because the shipping was, quite frankly, beside the product itself, the shipping was the most expensive.
Yeah, because your margins were pretty decent at $22 all in. When you got it down to that price for 59s, like 30%, 35 isn't bad.
Very good.
Were you using a Shopify site?
Yeah, I was Shopify. Right at the beginning, I used Squarespace. But once we really got the ball rolling, because Squarespace was really easy, like drag and drop builder and stuff like that. It's easy,
but it's limited. I find Squarespace drives me kind of crazy. I've always been a WordPress guy. I started getting into Webflow. We're building a Shopify site for Geo. Shopify, all the builders are all a little restrictive. Like even Shopify, again, WordPress is just so easy, and I've used it forever. But if you're selling a product, Shopify just makes sense. You have all those upsells, Shopify. And by the way, I got to mention, when you were doing all this stuff with shipping, this is before Amazon was really taking off, right? Like, did they have any warehousing at the time?
Yeah, no, options? Yeah, they did. Yeah, they had.
Oh, they did?
So I looked into FBA, and there are some. I think I was using ShipBob at the time, and they have services where they can be like, I don't know if they're still FBA, but you can be Prime and still not be FBA. So you can still qualify as Prime.
Explain what FBA is.
Like fulfilled by Amazon. So it's basically an Amazon warehouse, and I didn't really dig into it because there was quite a bit more cost associated with it, but I believe it's easier to deal with, and you have lower Amazon fees, but there's like higher fees in some other places. I ended up just not going
with FBA. Can they store your product and act as your warehouse supplier, distributor, but not be on Amazon? Or do you have to be on Amazon if you're with FBA?
I don't know.
The only reason I ask is because at the time you were looking at those different networks, I feel like, I don't know I can't remember, this was like, 12 years ago? 10, 12 years ago?
Would have been
less than that, 7?
2016 probably, so that'd be like
is it, 2022, 24?
2024.
8 years ago, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to put my timeline together.
Yeah, that would be like 2016, 2017, 2018. So we launched it I think I launched it in 2015.
Yeah.
It was a Kickstarter. So 2016 was like the reiteration. So there was right up until 2019 when it was acquired.
Gotcha. Christy, did you ever try it? I feel like...
I I did. I tried the original, not the relaunched.
Oh yeah, the good chunky stuff.
Lots of stevia.
Yeah.
You're not really a protein person.
Not but I would say that I'm like, if a protein were to sell me on the things that you're talking about, like the whole food, very like health conscious, I would be more into it. I think because protein in the past, like I'm literally like, I have a protein thing on my desk right now, and I just know that this is bad for me, but I'm pregnant and I need protein. So like,
so Christy told me that those protein shakes are bad for you. Those are the, what are they called? The protein,
well, we don't need to throw anybody under the bus, but
whatever.
I just bought a case of those for my neighbor.
Yeah,
I go to the gym with every day.
Like what's the brand name on that, babe?
Premier Protein.
Premier Protein. They're the ones you get at Costco, whatever. But they have the coffee flavor I have at home right now. Man, they're so good. Christy's telling me they're bad for me. What's the deal?
Well, to be honest, I don't know. I saw on TikTok that it's like one of the worst
TikTok doesn't
versions
lie.
of protein that you can have. So
it was on the internet.
It was on the internet, and it was a video made by a health person. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could dig into every ingredient. Like the big thing now is like a lot of artificial sweeteners. There's links to Alzheimer's and stuff. So, and I think, I don't know about Premier Protein, but like muscle milk, for example, has sucralose in it. So some people don't like that. And it's like, well, we also had like 6 beers at dinner last night.
Yeah.
It's like, pick your battles, right?
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I'd rather probably have an artificial sweetener than regular sugar, right? Like
Than
just
refined
health
sugar?
wise, yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know what that is, to be honest. I think if you just mostly eat whole foods and then supplement as needed, that's kind of your best bet.
I've been trying to do that. Actually, we're going to Mexico in April. We're a few weeks away, and one of my goals, the one goal I've stuck to, was stop ordering DoorDash, because DoorDash is just, I was ordering it like 4 times a week, because you give any excuse to order Skip or DoorDash.
Oh yeah.
And I've actually done good, and then obviously hitting the gym 5 times a week, and then I'm trying to cycle and whatever, but it's easy to put on weight when you're a busy guy, and food is so accessible, and again, any food you order online, even the health stuff, if it's a blended shake, it's still not good for you. You get the issues there with blending up fruits, but most of the time it's like Chinese or pizzas or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Even just cutting that out, like just cutting that one thing, and we haven't. It's been a little tedious to cook dinners and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I have been basically transient for the last 2-3 years with the business now finally slowing down. I got this place to myself, and I finally started cooking dinners because I hunt. So I have like tons of deer meat I've had in the freezer. Half of it's freezer burnt now, but I'm just eating it.
Well, I want some deer meat next time.
I got a ton. My
I
freezer
love
is
deer meat.
filled to the
It's
top.
so good.
Yeah, I got tons.
By the way, when you said transient, I immediately thought translucent, and I'm like, you're see-through?
Yeah, I haven't been on a vacation.
It's been a long day. Okay, so then you end up I don't know where you want to go here, but because you ended up getting, did you transfer the business? Did the business become high protein, like Human Improvement, from the sale, or is that pre-sale?
No, so we basically, I just got a random, like when you start a business, or you get a little bit, like with Farm Track, I'm sure, get a little bit of press, and there's just random emails all the time of like, I have an opportunity for you, and blah, blah. And I remember this one guy's was, it was just one of the ones, but it stuck out because it was like such a normal name. And I'm like, I'm gonna delete. Like, it was just like a one-line, like, hey, I got an opportunity, you open to connect? And I, like, delete it. Like a week later, same name, like same kind of email, but a little more detail. Like, hey, sorry, that was short note. Like, and it was from like a branded domain. And I Googled it. And I'm like, oh, this guy's like testifying at Congress for his current business. Like, this guy's legit. And I'm like, yeah, I remember I just landed at the airport of Montreal, and I'm like, yeah, here's my cell. Contact me. Phone rang immediately, like before I even got my baggage. And he's like, hey, I got opportunity. Like, this is my business that I have now. Like, this is why you popped up. And he's like, because my research team, we're transitioning out of our last investment. And so I ended up, flying down there to meet him shortly after, and turned like same ideas, same kind of values. And we started the process before it like officially was all signed over and stuff. Just took time with the lawyers, right, to put documentation and contracts together and stuff like that. So we were well under the way of development. I'm trying to think when we finalized the rebrand, probably would have been, we were well under the way of finalizing the rebrand already. If my memory serves me correct. And when paperwork got finalized, like within 2 weeks, we were already narrowed down our manufacturers and we're visiting the final 3.
Gotcha. Yeah. So were you bootstrapped until that point, or did you
Yep,
have
the bootstraps already ripped off. I was deep beyond it. With I had made some mistakes too, and had focused in. Well, I shouldn't say mistakes, or went after opportunities in hindsight that I should have given up on them earlier, like chasing after retail, and had used a lot of my financial resources because I had taken attention away from that to chase this idea of retail. And then when I finally got the retail opportunity, like, oh, there's like a $18,000 listing fee per SKU, and I probably want $1.2 million, and we won't pay you for 9 months. And if we can't sell it because we're bad at selling it, you have to take it all back, and it'll probably be expired. And I'm like,
Wow.
I don't want to take that risk.
What made you go take time to look at that route? Who gave you that advice, or was it advice, or?
Yeah, it was. I was in Toronto, and
Is that the time we were in Toronto? Or a different time?
It might have been, actually.
Yeah.
And it was around then or shortly after. And a guy in Starbucks tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "Are you that Cricket protein guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, I used to run this big supplement company, and I do all the marketing, or not the marketing, but the retail relationships." And he's like, "I can help you get into retail." He's like, "And I don't want nothing." And I was like, he's like, "But if something comes of it," he's like, "I would gladly take a job down the road." And this guy helped me. He actually helped us out 4 years later with High, and helped us out build out a sales compensation plan and stuff like that, because he was quite experienced in that industry with at an executive level. And yeah, it was just a random encounter, and not a bad route to go about it, and got me on the phone with places like Costco, for example, and taught me how to get samples in hands of the buyers at every major retail chain in Canada and the US, health, food, and grocery. And I had chased a couple deals, and one similar to what I just detailed, another one that signed the deal, ready to go. I was supposed to be in a CBC documentary, and I used that as leverage for the deal, and got called the day before I was leaving, and they're like, "We decided to not have you in here." I'm like, "You just ruined my life."
Yeah.
And I called the retailer, and they're like, I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I'm still coming out. Unfortunately, they pulled out on the documentary, and anyway, I'll be out there this day." And they're like, "Oh, we'll get back to you." And then that just dissolved. Never took the order.
Wow.
And I was stuck. And I had leveraged all my savings at this point, and before I quit my job, I had applied for several credit cards and called, because I had a good job, really good credit, got as much room as I can, and I'm like, this is my moment. And I used credit cards to buy all this, and then I was stuck with a whole bunch of inventory, and my web and organic online sales I had kind of let fall to the wayside. So I just reiterated at that point, and totally refocused online. Actually, a buddy who's doing an online business. He had a mink eyelash business. He was living in Vegas. He's like, "Hey, I got a spare room. You can $300 a month or $400 a month." He's like, "Come hang out." And he takes a pictures right in the Veer Towers on the strip, corner apartment, all glass. I was like, "Yeah, I'll come down there." So I went down there for 6 months and just totally refocused online, got myself back up to speed with all the Shopify apps, and did loyalty programs and all those different things that help with getting the online process going again. And just refocused on that, and started getting to the end of my product. I had used all my money, and right at the end, when I was running out of cash, I had an opportunity to go back and do some consulting in my old railway type business. So I used that to continue to fund operations until
pay off all that debt you accumulated from
oh man,
prepping for that. But
Yeah.
but you know what? I feel like that could have been an incredible moment. You kind of just got fucked over.
I mean, it was business. Like
Yeah.
really, I lost the biggest, like, of course I was mad and I'm like, I got fucked, right? And just mad at the world.
Yeah.
But like, in hindsight, I lost why would they, like, I'm nobody.
Yeah.
I lost my biggest leveraging chip. And that was like, for them to get, national news documentary coverage, for a program that was going to be pushed for multiple weeks, like they like I had negotiated hard and I needed to make a certain amount of money to make my numbers work down the line, and they were taking a chance on me, and then they just lost the thing that was probably going to help them sell my product with at a bigger on a bigger scale. So I mean, it's just business at the end of the day, right?
But these are those lessons. I've learned this 100 times as well. And the more times you go through it, it makes you more resilient to it.
Yeah. I don't care.
just literally a few weeks ago. So we've been doing. I'm an approved CDAP advisor for these digital adoption plans, and we did 15 of these plans last year. And it's the last year of the program. It's 1.4 billion funded, and the program director's like, "Yep, it's going to definitely go the 4-year term." So I invest in advertising and building my team, and again, it's a supplemental income revenue stream for us, but it was a good revenue stream, and we were doing good work for people. So I wanted to maybe double what we did the year before, get everything in place. Saturday we're going to launch our ads, get them up on the weekend when my guys have time. But the Friday, after getting everything ready, the government emails us, said the portal's closing down, we're oversubscribed, and then Monday they shut it down a year early.
Oh.
And they weren't. So again, a little bit of insight from they weren't oversubscribed. Trudeau's just been spending too much money, and they're trying to claw some back for these programs because they only did 20,000 plans. It's 1.4 billion. 20,000 times 15 is I think it was like 300 million. So they were including the BDC loans in that, but those are loans. So anyways, it's. But again, so I always look. So these are the kind of things that you and I deal with all the time, and if you can't deal with that, and I don't call that failure. That's just you took a calculated risk, and you know what? If I put all of this, if I'm going to accumulate some debt, I'm going to go on. But if this hits, that could have been massive for the company. And those are those things where the same with me. It's like, yeah, there's a ton of investment that goes into something at the potential for it to work. And a lot of times it doesn't work. And it's not like you and I just sit around and be like, fuck, and like we just, I don't know. You have to keep going.
That was like, the pre-podcast thing. Like,
Yeah.
And it's funny, since I filled that out, like a few podcasts I've heard, it's the same. Like my big thing in that, as I'm sure my theme is like, just don't stop. Like,
You're talking about the questionnaire.
Yeah, the questionnaire, yeah.
Yeah, that you filled out for us, yeah.
And I got that from, it's funny enough about this building. Like when that happened, I was going bankrupt. Like there was I think it was like 385 grand in debt. Most of it like credit cards.
It's doctor debt.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Without the skill or ChatGPT.
Yeah. Or government paying you to pay off.
And I had like, I think 15 grand of room left on my credit card, and servicing my debt was like $8 grand a month or something.
I was going to say the interest on that.
It was insane.
It's crazy.
And there was a bunch of 0% stuff because again, I had like super good credit still at the time. Oh boy, it's still recovering. It's in recovery, my credit.
But you found a way to get out of that hole.
Well, I have never, maybe one other time I've been so stressed out so consistently for such a long time, just a week, like what am I going to do? And I went to the Credit Counseling Society, and I had I hate budgeting and all that stuff, but I know I need to do this. So I have like spreadsheets with all my accounts and like what they cost, and everything's color coded and all this stuff. And I went to the Credit Counseling Society. I'm like, okay, so I'm like in pretty bad shape. I'm like, I don't know, what options do I have? She's like, well, first here's a form. Like you're going to go, fill out what your account balances are, what your debt. I'm like, well, I have the printouts and they're all color. She's like, oh, you're way beyond like, she's like, I'm just basically here to tell people that don't really know anything and know they're running out of just don't really know what's going on. They're like, you're running out of money. Like she gave me, your neighbor here's the insolvency
Laser grants.
Yep, the insolvency company. I came here with all this, and he goes, listen to my story, and he's like, thanks to him, and he's like, you have a pretty cool product. He's like, what's the difference of going bankrupt with 400 versus 380? He's like, just keep pushing until you run out, and there's always some more room. There's always things to do. He's like, just
Interesting.
Yep. I had been in that situation a few more times since that point, but after I left here, I literally went home, and it was like a day like today, like kind of sunny out, but it's still like March-ish or something, like coming out of winter. And I remember just sitting in the sun, and I'm like, I wish I could cry. And I was sitting on my phone just like trying to go numb. And I saw this one just short video, and it was some business guy. And he's like, the number one piece of advice he ever got was, don't quit, because he's like, true success always came only one stop beyond what he knew was ultimate failure, rock bottom. He's like, and then just keep taking a step. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and then literally my phone rang, and this guy's like, hey, do you want to do some consulting with the railway stuff? And I negotiated some terms, and I mean, the advice I'd gotten from a lot of entrepreneur people were just go bankrupt. Just go bankrupt. Like, just.
I don't like that.
And I had one friend that was like, do not go bankrupt. He's like, I think you're going bankrupt. He's like, you're fucked, but do not do it.
Don't.
And I just held on. And yeah, the consulting opportunity came up, and I was able to pay off the debt over, oh man, I don't know how long when would that have been? That was like, I started doing that in probably 2019. So it took until last year. So it was like 4 years of just dumping my money in and living off of almost nothing. So I finally got a apartment now, and just can cook my deer meat at home.
But it's interesting, right? Like I feel like my gut has always been more correct than most people's advice. Mm-hmm. And when you talked about when you were pushing that retail side and you gave up on the e-com side and it didn't work out, we did the same thing with FarmTrack. We had a great app that people wanted. I still get calls today about FarmTrack and the app, and it was a great app. Mm-hmm. We took Farmer's Edge advice because they were looking to buy us. So they were looking to buy us. We were very new. We were pre-revenue. We were just in the state of acquiring customers, but they pushed us into the technology side of things, which was feedlot tech, which we weren't experts in. We did a couple pilots. We had someone, and this is another lesson I learned. So two lessons I learned from this whole interaction over like 3-4 years was, don't chase the money unless you have a fucking check signed, because Wade Barnes and Farmer's Edge telling me that they're going to buy us just got us all salivating and getting we got into a sector we didn't understand. We knew how to develop apps and run software. We didn't know hardware. We didn't know technology. We didn't know that cattle space in that depth. Had we stayed and just built our app, I guarantee you today, this is like 7-8 years ago, we would probably have 10 to 50, maybe 100,000 farmers using that thing. And even if it was for free, there's so much value in those farmers using that app. Because we could use it for cattle, horses, sheep. We had all kinds of people using it. We got pushed, we got pulled, and we got greedy into a space where we thought we could get purchased and whatever. And we did build some really cool feedlot tech. We were basically monitoring cattle as they were coming into feed, and our whole goal was to predict illness. The other issue
is that just so I can track. Is that where you're having those like RFID tag sensors?
Yep.
So what was the difference? What would you have done differently in hindsight? Like not gone into that tracking the specific animal thing, or?
Yeah. So the challenge was, so we had this app. We built this cattle track app, and it was like just to help my buddy Stu track his cattle at home. And it kind of made sense to have a hardware product with it, because if you're on horseback or if you're going around and you want to scan that RFID, it pulls it into the app. So that's where we kind of we were probably going to get into hardware at some point. But where Wade Barnes wanted us to go and Farmer's Edge was they wanted on feedlot tech, and the whole goal there. And when you and I went to Toronto and I was pitching investors with my decks at the time, was we want from like farm to table traceability. which was becoming more popular. I mean, a lot of McDonald's and all these guys were talking about it, but the feedlot tech, I mean, you're talking about an app that we'd already built, that Dima built for us. He was just on the podcast, episode 4, launched today. What day is it? March 14th, by the way, because we don't know this. But he built this amazing app, and it was great. And this is where, and you had mentioned earlier about losing focus on things. It's like we could have just focused on that app. Instead, we put so many of our resources into building on feedlot tech. We got NSERC grants. We raised capital, a couple $100,000. We did 2 great pilots. We did a pilot on a feedlot, an organic feedlot, and then another one on Hamiota, which is 15,000 cattle. And then we went to these guys that said, okay, you do that second pilot, we'll invest $1 million. We come to them with the data, the pilot, everything, and they go, where's your revenue? We're like, what do you mean, where's our revenue? You said, we do the pilot, you're going to invest, because that technology needed a few $1 million to get a product to market. We need to figure out how do we add these things, because cattle will just, you grew up on farms, cattle will destroy anything. They can break steel like by just rubbing up against it. So we created a product that monitored but it needed to be durable, and we were in the development phase. So long story short, the Farmers Edge deal fell through. We didn't get our capital through that one investor, and again with 3 guys and a couple engineers, that's where we focused our time, and the company folded. And I to this day, like, I regret taking money from friends and family to do that. I truly believed we were going to be successful. It was like that home run moment where we had $1 million lined up. Like we had $1 million check coming. We were promised that when we did this. We did great work. We had great data, but we needed more money to review that data and build the next iteration of the product, and it failed. And then looking back, I'm like, man, especially after COVID, and every time there's a bovine respiratory disease or an issue, they always want to, if you can trace it back, the whole issue is like, if you trace it back to the farm, you can say, okay, this farm had that issue. We know which groceries have that product. We pull it all out. We can actually save the beef cattle industry from collapsing, because that's what happens every time there's a major disease outbreak. When you have bovine respiratory disease outbreaks, the entire Canadian cattle industry just dissolves, and like farmers lose their shirts because they're selling cattle for $1,500. Now they're selling for $100 just because no one wants to buy Canadian beef. That whole industry is incredible, and I have so much respect for farmers. And you mentioned earlier an acronym, WEF. What's WEF?
Oh, the World Economic Forum. Everybody, all the conspiracy stuff about forcing you to eat crickets.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck that. Here's the thing about anyone that is, whether you're vegan, whatever, listen, like, I have so much respect for farmers. I spend a lot of time on farms. They feed us. You want to produce a nation. You want to produce a nation that lives off plants and stuff. Good luck. We need meat. We eat meat. We need meat. The day that I'm not allowed to eat meat, fucking kill me. That's what I'll say about that. Like, I love our farmers. They work hard, and their margins are razor thin. And the whole goal with FarmTrack was to try to help my buddy Stu make more money and help them. That was the whole goal. And we got pushed away from our original vision. I take responsibility of that as the CEO. But again, we're young. You were young. Like, those mistakes we made, I learned from those. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't regret, like, losing money from investors. Like, that was really tough. That was really, really extremely hard on me.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That was not your situation, but it was the one thing I was, I managed to not do, which I don't know if it was the right decision or not. It was like, take on investors. Like, I had opportunities to go on Dragon's Den. Like, they were asking me, but I didn't want to be edited into the weird cricket dude. So I was just nervous about that. And I was like, oh, if I go on Dragon's Den, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, how am I going to get 3,000 orders sold?
Why are you nervous about being the cricket guy?
Well,
that kind of reminds me of Scott, because Scott's like, I don't want to be the cleaning guy. I'm like, but you know what? It's good for branding to be known as, like, that guy.
Hindsight, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, my advice now to who we were talking about earlier is, like, go on that. Like, actually seek them out. Like, I have contacts there. Get on it. I wish I would have done it. I didn't know how I would have been able to fulfill the demand. And then now I know, okay, well, now I'm way better at just finding what I need. Even if I have absolute, like, I should have had that confidence before because I'd been doing it already, but it had never really been prompted to me. Like that was one big thing. Like, I don't have any day-to-day, like COVID kind of messed up the day-to-day operate. Like I'm not involved day-to-day at all with High anymore. But like I learned so much from those guys developing that product and being with these guys that play in, in areas with way bigger numbers than we ever seen or imagined, and just running in different circles down there. But these guys are running 9-figure companies. Like they've been in charge of multiple 9-figure companies. They just do things different. And just by being around them, I learned like that skill, just being around them taught me more than any Dragon's Den episode or any check an investor would have cut me. And even though, financially I'm upside down on that company, the experience is so much more valuable. But that was something they always told me. They're like, hey man, like quit being so Canadian. They're like, have some more. Cause the one guy, he is Canadian and he's like, you gotta be boastful. He's like, brag about yourself. He's like, look at what you built and you did this. He's like, I thought you were lying to me that you did this by yourself. He's like, you figured out an industry, developed a product. Then he's like, you did all the branding and marketing. He's like, you have he's like, your tubs and labels are better than most major national brands. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And
you don't look at it that way though. You don't think about it.
I'm just like, I'm not doing enough.
Well, but you also on that mindset, because I remember you and I were talking in Whistler, and just the mindset of you mentioned you just long story short, you had mentioned that some of these guys and some maybe I don't know if they were high investors or whatever, but they had taken products and they didn't even like the product, but they turned it from like 10 million to 200 million sold. And it's like that. There's just a level of business, and I'm not there yet, but a business acronym where it's they don't care about things that you and I care about. They're like, okay, what is this? How do I flip that? Is that kind of what's happening with High, or can you like?
No, like they believe in that product, and they're still like that product. It's still going, and the company's doing well. And it actually there was I had a meeting with them a little while ago, and there is like they're just always iterating on the audience, and finally struck a really good vein in the last year, and the company's really growing now.
Sorry, we skipped ahead a little bit. Can you talk about that acquisition and the sale of the company?
I mean, basically,
because it went from Crik to High. You talked a little bit about you guys were developing the High because the High was a new formula, right? And you had a couple different flavors. And what I liked about the branding, and I was going to mention this earlier, because I really like the Magic Spoon cereal. By the way, it's like to me, it seems like the healthiest, most delicious cereal ever with protein in it.
You know what's funny is the guys that developed Magic Spoon. Are the guys that developed the Cricket protein bar on that very first article. Yeah,
no way.
They actually sold, it was called Exo, and then they sold it to a cricket farm and developed Magic Spoon.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Same two guys, yeah.
Why I love Magic Spoon is because, again, when you get back into working out, I love cereal. I need something low carb, low sugar, high protein. And that's what that cereal is. But it actually, for the most part, most of them taste really good. And when High came out, what I as a marketer and a person that's been involved in a lot of brands, I think what was tough with Crik Nutrition was the focus on the crickets. Whereas High Human Improvement is focused on human improvement, which is what it's in the name. So now you have this brand where the main ingredient crickets isn't the focal point, which I think a lot more people can digest. It's more about the what is it, like vegan, non-GMO, like all these things and all the benefits of it.
Well, there was myself and the CEO and the CMO. So I was like head of product after the acquisition. There's a CEO who's the business guy. He's been in CPG for a long time. And then there's another guy who is...
Sorry, what's CPG?
Like consumer product goods.
Okay.
Or consumer packaged goods. And like in many different areas out there, like from, liquor to food to all these different ones. And the marketing guy, he has been again a CMO and a brand developer and product developer for like if I don't know what exactly I can say, right, but just for sake of privacy, like multiple brands that we have all heard of and many of us own, and that you can see in that evolution to High, like you were mentioning, right? It's like get the focus, because everybody's just like, oh, don't focus on crickets. But I'm like, for me, I kind of need to, because I know I don't have the marketing chops and the advertising chops or the time to put into that. I'm like, that's a shock value, easiest way to get it.
Well,
if I
and
target the right
it was a
people.
differentiator at the time as well.
Yeah,
And there
exactly.
was a market for people looking for that product
Still.
and you mentioned like early on, you really were heavily focused on SEO and hammering those articles and building up the SEO for it. And you mentioned you're on Joe Rogan, which is really cool.
Yeah, no. Well, what
Or
that
you've been
was,
featured.
yeah, there was a
Jimmy
guy
brought you up.
on there, Mark Sisson, a guy who I'd been at his like fitness camps like year before. He's like the Mark's Daily Apple is his website, and he's like one of the original like paleo diet guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was on Rogan a few years ago, and it's funny. One day I just had like $10,000 in sales, and a week later, I think it was, a buddy's like, hey. He's like, I was watching Rogan, and I just always put it on my screen because I always listen to it. And I listened to that episode, and they were talking about cricket protein. So when Jamie on Rogan typed in cricket protein, and he's scrolling, it's just my product.
That's cool.
And yeah, that resulted in like $10,000 in sales, which I had not had one of those days.
Influence works. Influencers work
Yes,
sometimes. Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, and Joe, imagine if that was today because of the amount his following, how it's grown.
yeah.
Because that was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's cool because I love Joe Rogan now. I'm gonna have to look up that episode for sure.
Well, even thinking about him, and it was something you touched on earlier with our intuition. It's like if I actually just followed my gut. That's why I'm like mental about writing all my ideas down, organizing them, and then planning and actually attacking them now, and like selfishly going after stuff, because there are things I didn't do because I was like worried about how people would think, or like people would think it was stupid or whatever. And if I had done them, it would have made everything else way easier. And I don't know. It's like, intuition to me, I don't really. Depends what you believe, right, and how life works. Or I heard the other episode you're talking about you guys started going to church. Like, what do you believe how the universe works? Like, there's something that is tugging you. Like, where are these ideas coming from your subconscious? Whatever it is, but there's a reason that these intuitive things that just pop into your mind when you're not like forcing thought. It's always those like shower thoughts or
late night, man.
Yeah,
like 11 o'clock at night when I'm trying to wind down. Boom, idea.
Well, and last week, so moved in, finally unpacked. I'm like, killed all my stupid bugs from my new plants in my apartment, and I'm like,
Gross.
got my Dyson, finally cleaned all the mud from transplanting everything, and I listened to The Great CEO Within, amazing book, and the other one was A Hard Thing About Hard Things. The Great CEO Within, though, I would highly recommend reading that one. And it gave me this idea, and I was like, oh. And I called my business partner for my current business, and I'm like, man, we need to implement this. And he's like, I was literally just texting you this. He's like, took a screenshot. Like, I was literally just texting you this exact same thing. He's like, I was talking to my uncle. It's like, what is a chance of that? We were both independently thinking of the exact same thing at the same time on a Saturday night at 11 p.m. And me and him sat on the phone for like 3 hours flushing out this idea. And it's like full underway. Like, had a meeting with our accountants today about that to implement this thing. But it's just like, back to intuition. It's like, there's like, man, just work hard, trust your gut, and don't stop.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to try it. It happens all the time. I do that all the time. There's a ton of ideas, and Chrissy probably gets sick of hearing them. I'll come to bed at 3 a.m. and be like, that's a great idea. Yeah. I'm building it out. Because I don't work on regular time scales that most people do, 9 to 5. It's like if an idea comes in, I'm working on it. I'm writing the ideas down, but it's great. It's fun, and a lot of ideas don't work out. I had a friend one time. One of the things that Christy and I were talking about doing was eventually maybe owning like a little getaway resort at LDB or somewhere like that with 5 or 6 cabins. And this is an idea phase. I'm learning. I'm talking to buddies that know it. I was having a conversation with a friend at a party who builds cabins, and I'm trying to figure out the cost of this. So I'm like, okay, could this make sense? Because I want to do little 2-person getaways, and my friend's wife was there, and she's saying this would be great, like if we could bring our kid out too as well, because people actually want to be with their kids, when they go on these little weekend getaways, and then they could do like camps during the day with the parents. Anyways, figure out the cost. And one of my buddy looks at me and goes, he's like, Chris, he's like, what I've always loved about you is like, you just love taking risks. And I'm like, yeah and no. I'm like, you're wrong. And that if you think that my whole life is just taking risks, you're wrong. I take risk, but it's usually calculated.
Right.
And it's the same thing with everything we were doing earlier. I think now, today, I think as I've grown, I'm a lot more open-minded to things, but I'm also more capable of calculating risk before I act. I know, like, I have another project I'm working on right now. It's going to cost me $5,000 to do an MVP. Something that I can get up, I can pay I have a developer working on it. I can get it to market for $5,000, test it, $5,000. Like, sure, if I lose $5,000, whatever. If it wins and I keep going, great. But that's what you and I have learned over the years is like find the cheapest way to get something to market and test it. And yeah, sure, there's risk involved, but like there's two sides of it. The upside of if it works, great, but also I think what's worse is the downside of if I don't fucking do anything, like a loser. No offense to people that don't do anything, but if you're someone, whatever.
No pause.
Nope.
No offense.
No offense. My point is like if you're someone that is just full of ideas but you never execute on anything, you're a fucking loser. Go do something.
That is like the me quitting CN thing. Like
yeah.
I heard it years ago was, well, make the decision, like sit down and think about you make both decisions, like imagine it. Which one would you regret less?
Yeah.
Like if say both of them didn't work out, which one would you regret less? Like not trying? And it's like the age old sayings like you're gonna think about your regrets more on your deathbed than than the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So it's definitely a huge thing. And like again, those ideas come from somewhere, and it's back to when I was younger with all the materialistic stuff. It's like like the experiences I've had since then, and like I lived to ride something on two wheels, like motorcycles, and like I always grew up with them and loved them. And I got rid of those when I quit CN, and I just finally bought my first motorcycle last year. It was like 8 years, and like I literally lived for that. Yeah. But every opportunity I could, if I'm on vacation, like rent a scooter or borrow a buddy's bike or dirt bike or whatever, and yeah, it's the experiences along the way, right, and the varied ones.
And I've had like 3 bourbons. I apologize for calling you a fucking loser for not executing. But you got to get as an entrepreneur, you got to find motivation from somewhere. And sometimes people just aren't hard enough on you. Like the people I don't want in my life are the people that are super nice to me. Like, you're doing great. I'm like, you don't fucking know if I'm doing great. Yeah. And Christy, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but we had this conversation the other night, and Christy is an amazing content creator, social media marketer, and she's been putting off advertising her social media bundle and getting it out there for months. And the other night I just kind of came down on you a little bit. But yesterday you started working on it and you started filming the videos for it. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk to that experience of me being hard on you? Because like, again, it's hard as a husband and wife duo.
Yeah.
But I was hard on you, and intentionally, like, I'm like, listen, this is the last time I'm going to bring it up, but I've got people that want your consulting bundle and want your service, but I need something to sell to them.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was putting off the on-camera portion of it, and that's just something that I've never been really comfortable with. I've been really honest and open about that on my own social media. When I first started my business, it was something that I wanted to help other people get more comfortable with, and so yeah, I was a bit of a hypocrite to put it off for as long as I did. But the bundle has been ready, and I have been advertising it. It's just that on-camera side of it where I need to actually speak to it and put some value behind the readability, like the guide version of it. So, I needed that push. Is it hard in the moment? Absolutely. Especially coming from a loved one.
Yeah,
but
and I felt bad. You were tearing up and crying. But listen, you started filming yesterday. How good did that feel to take that step?
Yeah, and I wasn't crying because you came down on me. We'll be clear about that. I was tearing up because it was a big insecurity that I knew that I needed to do it, and I've been hard on my own self internally about it for that long, and then you just brought that insecurity out and just highlighted the fact that yeah, no, I have not been doing this and I have not been putting my goals first. And I need to be doing that for myself and for our family.
Yeah. And I'm proud of you. And I'm gone this weekend, but I hope you can get that thing going because it's something I can sell. And the biggest thing with social media management, a lot of people are taking it internally. The whole course that she offers is basically training someone in-house to do social media for that business.
Yeah, that's
I think
huge.
where it's going. It's massive.
Yeah, because like having in-house now, there's just so many intricacies. Like,
Yeah.
I spent, like this is a lesson. I was talking to somebody doing some coaching the other day, and it's like for me, it's like every story for me has every ingredient has a story, and like being able to tell that story takes a lot of time. And hiring a third-party social media person, like I tried that, it's just not. I would rather not have social media than just random like stock photos with like be happy, try our protein. Like it's not.
I remember you going through that.
Yeah,
because at the time I was doing social media management too. But it's because you need someone internally that understands the business. What Christy can do, and with the course is like training people internally, because it's like how to take photos, how to write copy, when to post, how to post. All those things people can do. They need to be trained. That's where the videos come in so handy, and that's where I'm like. Everything. So for her bundle, I'm like, every single question you ask, you're making a video on that. Another lesson for just people that want to get like maybe an online course or something going, there's a lot of value in that. And just assume people don't know anything. Like that's how you have to take it with those things. Like even if it's as dumb as like how to log into Facebook and access your business settings, make a video on that because people need that.
Well, we're just implementing that now in my construction company. Is like I'm looking at like. I was just, man, I had to apologize to our whole team because I'm like, man, like I'm not in the field as much as I was anymore. And like, I heard like my operations manager's like, yeah, we did like our 3-month reviews with everybody and morale's kind of low. I'm like, what? I'm like, we're crushing this project. Like, well, like every time they hear from you now, it's because it's bad. I'm like, oh yeah. So I'm like, apologize to the team. And then there's things, me being in this industry for 20 years, my operations manager is like 36 years, our QC guys 30, 40 years. There's a lot of stuff I take for granted that I'm like, well, why would you do that? Like that is the most basic, and it's just like, well, I haven't done it in a little while. I'm like, yeah, but I haven't done it in 7 years. Like, but there's all these little things. So we actually, a friend of mine that has a construction company, he showed me this company, the software called Trainual, like training manual.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he uses that. And so I'm getting my QC guys now going to be doing all of our in-field training, like full-time position to go through each guy. But we're going to build an internal library of, he said because you can take videos, the AI does the closed captionings, does all the work for you, makes it into PDFs and stuff. So now there's going to be no excuse for not knowing. It's like, well, go and look. And then, because the beauty about software and videos, you do it once and it's good forever. But I wanted to touch on something about, taking that step to make those videos again. Like what Christy's doing, it's like I do that all the time. The things that I see go for my to-do list from day to day to day, it's like you got to either cut it or do it. And every time I usually end up stupidly sitting down at 11:30 p.m. I'm like, okay, I'll just start this. And every time you get into it, it's like you get into flow and you crush, and it's like 4:30 a.m. So I fell asleep before coming to this podcast today because I did one of those things, and I stayed up till 4:30 a.m. doing work, and I had to get up at 6:30.
I was up till 4 last night too.
Yeah, and then I usually get to sleep in. I usually sleep till like 9 when I don't have to be out in the field. And today I had to get up super early to shuffle trucks around, so it was like minimal sleep.
You made it.
You
made it. But like and honestly, the podcast starting this 4 or 5 weeks ago, I've been putting off. Well, actually, wouldn't putting. I had set up those ads I told you about for CDAP, and then the program failed. But sometimes you just need something that kickstarts your confidence and then just do it. And even with the podcast, it took 2.5, almost 3 months to get the studio set up. And the first episode with Bobby wasn't the greatest lighting. The audio has always been spot on, but I'm very particular about lighting and setup. Every episode we've modified it slightly, and it's like I think you got to get over your own ego about how it's never going to be perfect. Get it, and even with your product with Crik, you ended up becoming high improvement. That first Crik product wasn't perfect, but you got to get something to market. quickly, because again, the more time you waste, especially when you're a startup, now with AdEasy and with Geo, I have the ability to spend more time with product iteration, but we're still testing, but when you're bootstrapped, you got to get something to market fast and sell that shit.
Well, you need sales. It's
Yeah,
the
you need
blood
sales.
of every business, right? And
Yeah.
like any business, no matter what, like unless you're playing that, what do you want to play? Do you want to play that like I'm gonna not make money and raise a bunch of money or figure out how to do grants? It's like, well, that was advice you got early on around that farm track day. It's like,
Yeah.
well, like because I saw people that got good at getting grants and that their business, like those people
That's what
never
their business relied on.
they never grew, but they got good at getting grants, not good at making money, not
Yeah.
good at building a business. And those people don't have businesses this day.
You're
And
right.
it's like we are not doing the same thing, but
Yeah.
we have businesses because
They
every
they
business
spent
translates.
so much time on the grants that were made for R&D, so developing a product, but they never figured out how to attract clients.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's too like any coaching I get into with people that I like see what they're doing and they believe in what they're doing and I can tell they're good at it. It's like, oh yeah, it was so hard to develop this and get this going and learn how to fill. It's like, no. The hardest part is now to get eyeballs, to get customers like that. Cause well, what book is that? Built to Sell.
Yeah.
It's like the technician. You always want to be doing the thing, but it's like, hey, if you want to be doing the thing, you probably shouldn't really start a business in it in most cases, because if your business is successful, you're not going to be doing that thing. Yeah. So you gotta either learn to fall in love with the process, because it's like now I'm not doing in the work in my construction company. I don't do much of. I do sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's like we have people in place, and now that's why I was reading those. I'm like, I need to be an executive now, and it's a completely different mindset. And thankfully, I'm just addicted to the chaos of business, and that's what I actually do. Like, you got to find what you love about business, and then hire the rest. At the beginning, you got to do all of it, and just not sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very little sleep. Well, I want to wrap it up with you, brother. I mean, we can talk for hours. Just let me know, where's High Protein at today? And what's the website, so if people want to go buy some, that they can buy some?
Yeah, so it's buyhigh.co, so BUYHI.co. The company, like I said, they really hit a stride focusing on, again, it's the people that are, it's the functional fitness type people. Not as much of the CrossFit as I thought, but the people that are, and even not even like the triathlon type people, but those people that you see, like if you want to pick an influencer persona, the ones that are out there hiking every weekend, they're in great shape. They're
Better for your gut too, right? Isn't it? It's
like
easier on your system.
That was biggest thing I noticed when I started just make it for myself. It was like you could take a 60 grams of protein shake, drink that, and go do your PR deadlift.
I get bloaty from a lot of proteins. I fart.
That's the hugest. That's the biggest physical benefit from that. Besides, like the ingredients themselves, is like you actually just can hammer that down.
Yeah,
it's not gonna make you burpy, farty, whatever.
Christy would appreciate that.
Negative effects.
No, it's true. It is a great product. And then I know we've touched on this a lot, but so you're talking to guys that are coming up that are starting a company. What advice are you giving to them when they're starting out?
I like earlier. It's like trust your gut. That was like every year I pick a theme for myself, and one year was just like that's when I learned like to trust my gut, because usually, like at every bad business deal, every good business deal, I knew before I even decided.
Yeah,
and you like trust your gut, and just don't quit. Like that's it. Like, what's the difference between, like, I don't know if this is a famous quote or not, but I always say it. It's like, what is the difference between people that are successful and people that aren't? The one thing that's common across the entire board is winners don't quit. They just don't. They just never stop. Because it's like a glass half full, glass half empty. Like man, you know some of the issues I've been through every business I've ever had, and they can be terrible, but you gotta get over it. Get over it eventually. Like, it's okay to wallow in it a little bit, but get over it. And there's always a benefit. Because we all know people that always win, and we know people that always lose. And the losers are constantly like, oh, well, this happened to me. It's like, yeah, but you made a bad choice and you didn't learn from it. So it's like, just don't quit, find the positive, and trust your gut.
And to that point, when CDAP closed down a few weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I always look on the bright side. I've left some focus on my main service offerings. Now I'm building ads for that. Just keep moving, keep evolving. I kind of like the quote of like what Laser Grant told you. What's the difference between going bankrupt at 380 or 400,000?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, you're going to be bankrupt.
Yeah,
So
I love that. And he's a great guy. But no, buddy, I appreciate you coming on here, sharing your stories with us, and my wife for being vulnerable. I'm sorry, I got a little carried away in the bourbon today, but we had a good time.
It's okay.
Thanks for being on, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers. It's a wrap.